SCP-343. The Foundation classifies the creator of the universe as safe, and that is not a joke. It is a bureaucratic surrender. SCP-343 presents as an elderly humanoid male with no distinct racial features, roughly 6 feet tall, who appeared at Site-17 and simply declined to leave. He occupies a room measuring 6.1 by 6.1 meters, a 20-foot square with a bed and a chair, and he stays in it voluntarily, because every attempt to hold him against his will failed instantly and embarrassingly. Asked to demonstrate his abilities during an early interview, he walked through the solid wall of his chamber and came back seconds later holding a hamburger. He knows the names of staff he has never met, he answers to God but refuses to confirm whether he is the God, deflecting theological questions with the patience of something that has heard them for eternity. And here is where the horror actually sits. He could end every containment breach in the archive. He could unmake the Scarlet King with a sentence. He doesn't. He sits in a beige room in a Foundation site making small talk about the weather, and when researchers press him on why he permits the things documented in every other file, he changes the subject. The most powerful being on this list is also the most indifferent. The Hateful Star, PSR B0531+21, is a real optical pulsar in the Crab Nebula, roughly 6,500 light-years from Earth, spinning about 30 times every second. In Foundation documentation, it is SCP-1548, and starting in the 1970s, it stopped behaving like a rotating neutron star and started behaving like something with opinions. Radio telescopes began resolving its pulse pattern into English. The early messages were crude and repetitive. You cannot hide, only death. The vocabulary of something learning to speak by shouting. Then, after it reached its apparent maximum velocity in late 1978, by means nobody has explained, the messages became erudite and coherent. It began addressing individual astronomers by name. It insulted them personally, referencing details of their private lives it had no way of knowing. Telescopes left recording automatically, with no human present, received generic threats against humanity as a species. Telescopes with people at them received threats against those people. Then came the transmission that changed its classification. The star announced that it had just remembered the coordinates of every secure Foundation facility and the personal information of the O5 Council, after which its pulse rate climbed from 30 Hz to well over a kilohertz, the astronomical equivalent of a scream. It was reclassified Keter by order of the Council. The note attached is 4 words long. It knows too much. Moloch. The statue is glazed earthenware, approximately 3 meters tall, dated to roughly the 2nd century BCE, and it depicts a winged humanoid with the head of a bull and its mouth hanging permanently open. The front of the torso is hinged at the top and swings outward to reveal a cavity of about 0.6 cubic meters, which is, not coincidentally, roughly the volume of a small child. It locks from the outside. The Foundation designates it SCP-089 and titles the file Tophet, after the site outside Jerusalem where the Hebrew Bible says children were burned to Moloch. At irregular intervals, with no detectable mechanism and without its mouth moving, the statue speaks. It describes a disaster, an earthquake, an outbreak, a structural collapse, named and located. Between 3 and 11 days later, that exact disaster begins, precisely as described, unless Protocol M8 has been completed first. Protocol M8 requires the Foundation to locate a mother with a child under 6 years old, persuade her to place the child in the cavity, seal it, and burn it alive. She has to do it willingly. A proxy does not satisfy the condition. The Foundation has completed the protocol, more than once. There is no known method of destroying the statue, no way to predict when it will speak next, and no version of this file where anyone involved comes out clean. The Gate Guardian. Somewhere near the confluence of the Tigris and the Euphrates, in what is now Iraq, there stands a humanoid figure approximately 700 cubits tall, over 300 meters, taller than the Eiffel Tower, visible from the horizon if you were permitted to look. Luminous wing-like appendages emerge from its shoulders, its back, its temples, its ankles, and its wrists, and no two observers have ever agreed on how many there are. Counts range from 2 to 108, with the mean sitting around 4, which suggests the number is not a fact about the entity, but a fact about the observer. It holds a weapon, possibly a sword, possibly a knife, and spectrographic analysis indicates the flames it emits burn at temperatures rivaling the surface of the sun, while scorching absolutely nothing around it. It does not eat, sleep, speak, or move from its position. It has exactly one behavior. Anything that comes within 1 kilometer is struck by the blade and obliterated from existence. No body, no ash, no debris, nothing to recover, nothing to bury. This is Dr. Clef's SCP-001 proposal, and the conclusion it builds toward is that the entity is a cherub, that the gate behind it leads to Eden, and that it has stood there for the entire span of human civilization to guarantee we never go back. It is not hostile, it is a lock, and we are on the wrong side of it. The Brothers of Death. There are 3 of them, and Foundation documentation names them the Small Death, the Great Death, and the All Death. Death at the scale of 1 person, death at the scale of a world, and death at the scale of absolutely everything. What is known about them comes mostly through SCP-1440, an elderly man who cannot stop walking. He was a soldier. He died on a battlefield and refused to accept it, having decided that the men who lay down around him were fools and cowards. So he challenged the brothers to a game of cards with his own lifespan as the stake. He won. Then he kept winning, taking their most prized possessions off them one hand at a time, and finally taking immortality itself. So they cursed him. SCP-1440 cannot remain in any location for long, cannot form attachments, and cannot be near other human beings without causing catastrophe. Buildings collapse, machinery fails, everyone he touches suffers, and most of them die. He described the brothers to a Foundation researcher as each being different from the others but uniformly cruel, vengeful, and capable of holding a grudge across centuries. The 3rd brother has never once appeared to him. That is the genuinely cruel part. The old man understands that the 3rd brother's arrival is the only thing that would ever release him, and the 3rd brother understands it too. Anantashesha. In the Bay of Bengal there is an eel, and Foundation estimates put its length somewhere between 600 and 900 kilometers, long enough to stretch from London to Berlin and most of the way back. SCP-3000 lies coiled in the deep water, largely motionless, and it is arguably the single most operationally important anomaly the Foundation possesses because of what comes out of it. As it digests, it excretes a black compound designated Y909, and Y909 is the base ingredient of every amnestic the Foundation manufactures. Every memory wipe, every cover story that held, every civilian who woke up the next morning with a plausible explanation for something impossible, all of it traces back to this animal's digestive process. Harvesting requires the Aztec protocol, executed by the Foundation submarine STPF Aramita, and the protocol consists of lowering D-class personnel to the creature, letting it feed, and sending divers in to collect the residue while digestion is underway. Prolonged proximity produces vivid hallucinations in which the entity speaks, ancient, patient, and entirely aware of the arrangement it is party to. In the wider mythology, this is Anantashesha, the world serpent, a god that was stripped of its sapience and reduced to livestock. The Foundation's entire capacity to keep humanity ignorant runs on continuing to feed a chained deity human beings, the serpent. At the deepest level of the Wanderer's library, an interdimensional structure that physically grows on its own as new knowledge comes into existence anywhere, something is coiled in the dark that the librarians will not discuss with visitors. The serpent is the library's creator and the god of the serpent's hand, the anomalous resistance movement that wants the veil torn down and the anomalous made public so that humanity can finally use it. Its original worshippers were long-lived monks who held that the spreading of knowledge was the highest honor a living thing could receive. Across human history, the serpent has been called Satan, Jormungandr, Quetzalcoatl, the Serpent of Eden, and dozens of other names in dozens of unconnected cultures, and Foundation theologians treat that convergence as evidence of one entity rather than coincidence. Its associated concept is the dichotomy of is and is not, the thing that exists set against the thing that has been erased from existing, and that pairing is not decorative, because the serpent is described as the brother of Anantashesha, the eel the Foundation farms for memory-erasing narcotics. One brother is the god of everything that can be known. The other has been reduced to raw material for forgetting. Both of them are still down there in the dark, and only one is chained. Terran the Tyrant. Orcadian legend calls him the master of unbridled hate, envious of mortal life, conjurer of unholy storms, and unlike most entries in a mythology hub, the Foundation actually has him on file. Terran is one of the 13 Oder, the primordial gods of the Seas of Orcadia canon, and his entire recorded personality is resentment. He did not fall from grace. He was not wronged. He simply could not tolerate that anything living existed at all, and he set about erasing it using weather, winter storms that flattened the Orkney Islands, seas that turned on the people who fished them, cold that arrived out of season and killed. His opposite number is the Mither, the progenitor who built the world he wants to unbuild, and the two are described as locked in a permanent seasonal war for control of sea and sky, one gaining ground through the summer, the other through the winter, neither ever finishing it. He was eventually sealed beneath the watching stones under the Orkney sky, which is a poetic way of saying he is still on Earth, still conscious, and still lying under a set of standing stones that ordinary tourists photograph on holiday. In that framework, every unusually violent North Atlantic winter is him testing the seal. The Mither. She is the eldest of the 13 Orcadian Ogre and the universal progenitor of the Finfolk, and her file is unusual because it is mostly about restraint. The Mither is described as genuinely benevolent, a creator who made life because she wanted it to exist, who is said to feel the love of the universe as a physical sense the way a person feels heat. She is also described as bound in astral chains. Those two facts are related. Her justice is not gentle and it is not proportionate. Records of her interventions describe corrections delivered on a geological scale, entire populations rewritten in a single act, with mercy and annihilation issuing from the same source and no visible transition between the two. The chains are not a prison built by an enemy who defeated her. The mythology indicates she is restrained because a creator with that much power and that little sense of proportion is a standing hazard to everything she made. Her mortal incarnation walks around as Dr. Alva Modir, catalogued as SCP-3711, employed inside the Foundation, which means the Foundation is simultaneously staffing itself with a fragment of a god and helping to keep that god tied down. She is the kind one. That is precisely why she is on the list. Jalakara of the Impenetrable. Picture a gigantic spider with a human face and a full beard, and you have the 7th Order Prince of Corbenic. Jalakara is not a monster in the conventional sense, which is exactly what makes it unnerving. The entity is a patron, and it deals honestly. In exchange for worship, offerings, and material resources, it provides real, functional divine protection, and the Three Moons Initiative has maintained a working relationship with it across multiple documented incidents on exactly those terms. Jalakara rules Corbenic alongside 7 siblings, and the roster reads like a fever dream with a filing system. Kum, an 8-armed hybrid of stork and dragon who kindles a mystical fire that generates living things. Nazdak, a 7-headed ferret who governs all wildlife. Muzd, a burning hawk presiding over flame, art, and construction. Room, a humanoid deer who holds the domain of love, and Hajeti, a sea turtle with human hands who oversees commerce and trade. Jalakara's own brother Abad, the 3rd Vermin Prince, is a centipede. The Pantheon is organized, functional, and bureaucratic, and since the protection Jalakara sells is verifiably real protection, the obvious question is what exactly it is protecting its worshippers from, in a realm where these are the neighbors. Vuo. There is a 9th Prince of Corbenic whose name the other 8 do not say. Vuo is the Forgotten One, the personification of cruelty and suffering, deliberately scrubbed from the Pantheon's own records, and unlike most divine erasures in this mythology, this one reads as an act of hygiene rather than politics. Where the other princes govern recognizable domains like flame, love, commerce, and wildlife, Vu governs the experience of being hurt. Not death, not war, not punishment handed down for a crime. The raw sensation of suffering, considered as a thing in itself, treated as a portfolio significant enough to require a god. What survives of the documentation, primarily through SCP-7702, indicates that the remaining princes stripped Vuo's name out of every record they controlled, and in a mythology where names carry ontological weight, that is close to an execution. It did not take. Vu persists as an absence in the lists, a gap where a name should sit, and entities that get removed from the record in Foundation lore have a consistent and well-documented habit of returning through the hole they left behind. The princes tried to solve the problem of a cruelty god by forgetting him. That is not how you kill something. That is how you get haunted. Queen Mab. By roughly 275,000 BCE, 2 Fae sisters had achieved complete mastery over miraculous power and built an empire spanning the entire surface of the planet. Around 240,000 BCE, they went to war with each other over what the record describes only as a moral disagreement. Mab took the side of royalty and nobility. She won. She killed her sister with her own hands, but the act burned her powers out of her, and rebel forces drove what was left into the dark. She has been dead for over 300,000 years, and it has not slowed her down. Her body is contained as SCP-001-C, held inside a factory north of Krakow, Poland, built directly on top of Fey ruins. The factory exists to feed her. She accepts human sacrifices, strips those sacrificed of their identities entirely, and converts them into the nameless, people who no longer possess a self for anyone, including themselves, to remember. Loyal Fey organizations are still actively working toward her restoration. And the catastrophes that orbit her include the Day of Flowers, an SK-class dominance shift in which over 70% of SCP-1000's population was killed, and the survivors were degraded back into primitive apes, with the psychic trauma alone accelerating plant growth across the entire planet. A dead god with a supply chain is still a god. Rakmu Losan. The Holy Fourth is the last one left. According to the Church of the Second Hytoth, 7 guardian deities known as the Koru Teusa were created to defend this universe against the Voru Teut, monstrous extra-universal entities that pour in continuously through a tear in the fabric of reality that has never been closed. 6 of the 7 are gone. Zeyu Losan, the Holy First and original leader, died repelling the first invasion. Euron Losan, the Holy Second, a swordsman whose 2 blades were torn directly out of space, killed his own brother Eov Losan, the craftsman who carried 3 power cannons. Nesrin Losan, master of psionics, was erased from the awareness of every living thing by something the Church has never been able to identify. Yorun Losan, holder of 6 staffs, whose influence shaped human thaumaturgy, died in the year 2000. Of Myron Lusan, the Holy Seventh, every scrap of information has been lost, not classified, lost. That leaves Rakmu Lusan, 4-armed, carrying the 4 spears, weapons capable of folding into any shape the situation demands, standing alone in a breach. An entire religion exists to lend strength to one exhausted god. The terrifying part is not the deity, it is the arithmetic. 7 defenders, 1 remaining, and the tear is still open. Mechane. The broken god is called broken for a specific reason, and the reason is the worst decision any deity in this mythology ever had to make. Mechane, known variously as Wan, Holos, Hakama, and the father serpent Fuxi, was the universal machine, the deity of intellect, progress, and technology, and it ruled early humanity alongside its opposite number, the god of flesh. When Mechane brought the beginnings of modernity to their shared people, that relationship collapsed into open war, and Mechane could not win it. So it did the only thing available. It shattered itself, deliberately, and used the fragments of its own body to forge an indestructible prison around the enemy. The mythology places the resulting devastation at the Bronze Age collapse, an entire era of human civilization ending as collateral damage from a divorce between 2 gods. The pieces scattered across the planet, and the Church of the Broken God has spent centuries hunting them, treating recovered anomalies including SCP-2117, SCP-271, and SCP-882 as relics of their god's corpse. SCP-882 is the heart. In the 1940s, church leader Robert Bumaro assembled nearly every fragment, could not locate the heart, and commissioned the factory to manufacture a replacement instead. The horror is simple arithmetic. If the church ever completes the reassembly, the prison comes apart with it. Yaldabaoth. The thing Makan broke itself to contain is the God-Eater, the womb of chaos, the dragon of flesh, a blind and idiot deity that its own worshippers describe as the principal power in the universe, the incidental evil creator that vomits forth life and then consumes it again. Yaldabaoth eats gods, it eats stars, it has consumed entire realities, and the remnants of the civilizations that were inside them are said to accumulate in a graveyard of dead universes. 6 subordinate archons serve beneath it. Where the machine god stood for intellect and progress, Yaldabaoth stands for flesh and instinct taken to their absolute limit, and the religion built around it. Sarkicism, properly called Nalka, from a word meaning hunger, teaches that its practitioners can achieve godhood themselves through the manipulation of living tissue. That religion exists because a Davite slave named Grand Karcist Ion led a revolt in the city-state of Aiditum and accomplished what nothing else in this mythology has managed. He seized power directly from Yaldabaoth and kept it, then used it to conquer most of Eurasia under an empire whose name meant deathless. Power scaling accounts place Yaldabaoth level with Mikane and the Hanged King. The Serpent's Hand, in at least one telling, describes it as the aunt of the Scarlet King, the Hanged King. He was a real king once, of a real city-state called Alagata, and by every surviving account he deserved what happened to him. He was a tyrant who exploited his subjects, indulged himself in whatever he liked, and reportedly practiced old magic drawn up out of the abyss. So the city rebelled. They burned his palace, killed everyone loyal to him including his court jester, tore away his crown and his robes and replaced them with rags and chains, broke his jaw so he could not answer them, and made him crawl through the streets while the people he had ruled kicked him, pelted him with filth, and cheered. Then they hanged him. What came back is described in Foundation documentation as a god-shaped hole, an immeasurably powerful ontokinetic entity ruling Alagata from a throne it physically cannot leave. Because it cannot move, it acts through proxies, the ambassador of Alagata, and the four masked lords, one of whom, the Black Lord, wearer of the anguished mask, the Foundation holds as SCP-035. Alagata connects to countless universes, and the doors into it open in ordinary places. One of them is an iron Janus door in the Martin Tower at the Tower of London. The city is modeled on Carcosa, and it is exactly that patient. Aziab. The Scarlet King took 7 brides, and each carries a seal: dominion, longing, desolation, wrath, lack, a hidden seal, and hope. Azib is the 4th bride, and her seal is wrath. Her children are the ones the Foundation cannot kill. The most notorious of them is SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile, the entity that has survived acid baths, incineration, structural collapse, and every termination attempt the Foundation has devised across decades, and which has stated plainly that it finds all life disgusting and intends to end it. That creature has a mother, and she is a goddess of wrath married to the king of everything red. Her sisters are catalogued alongside her: Adavik of dominion, Agor of longing, Adistat of desolation, Anuth of lack, Atelif whose seal is hidden even from the record, and Ahabat, the 7th bride, whose seal is hope and whose children are the Leviathan slayers, champions born specifically to fight their own father and their cousins. That last detail is the only thing that makes the file survivable. The same bloodline that produced SCP-682 also produced the only things in existence that oppose it, and in some readings, produced SCP-999 as well. The Devourer behind the door. There is a wooden door catalogued as SCP-23117, and stepping through it puts you in Universe Kappa Arakesh, an endless salt pan under a dead sky, silent, flat to every horizon. Standing in the middle of it, chained, is an obese humanoid roughly 600,000 feet tall, about 183 kilometers, more than 20 times the height of Everest, tall enough that its head would clear the orbit of the International Space Station. It is designated SCP-23117-K, called the Devourer of Worlds, and it was originally held by 7 chains. 6 have failed, 1 remains. The Foundation has not repaired the others, and the reason given in the documentation is not that it is impossible, but that it is unaffordable. The materials are irreplaceable, and the budget does not exist. The surviving chain degrades measurably by the minute, and projections put the entity's escape into our reality within roughly 30 years. Until then, containment rests on a ritual performed daily at solar noon, where the smallest error triggers an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. Junior personnel are told the door simply leads to another dimension. Senior personnel are told it is the Scarlet King. Neither has ever been confirmed, and the countdown runs either way. The Scarlet King, Shormaush Erdal, Karak, the Crimson Khan, the Red Shah. He is the closest thing this mythology has to a devil, and the Foundation associates him with authority, violence, masculinity, the color red, royalty, cephalopods, and cetaceans, an oddly specific list that becomes less odd the longer you sit with it. He commands the Scarlet Horde and an entire lineage of reality-bending descendants, while the Church of the Scarlet King and the children of the Scarlet King work continuously toward his arrival. He is imprisoned, not contained, and the distinction is load-bearing. He cannot enter this universe directly, so he works through his bloodline instead. That is what SCP-231 is. 7 girls were recovered from a warehouse following a police raid on his cult, all 7 impregnated by him. 6 died in Foundation custody. The 7th, SCP-23110 Montauk, was subjected to Procedure 110 Montauk on a daily basis for years, a procedure so brutal that only D-class personnel are permitted to carry it out, and the details remain redacted at every clearance level published, for the single purpose of preventing her child from being born. The Foundation did that every day, deliberately, in full knowledge of what it was, because the alternative was the birth of his heir. The Cosmic Starfish. SCP-3125 is not a creature. It is an idea, a structure occupying what Foundation documentation calls theta prime dimensionality, somewhere between the fifth and sixth dimension, described in the archive as an anomalous metastasized mass of hostile memes. It is a living concept whose only apparent goal is to overwrite the entire human noosphere with its own fractal, self-replicating pattern. It is antimemetic, which means it defends itself in the most efficient way anything has ever devised, by killing whoever understands it. Perceive enough of its structure and it does not merely kill you. It kills everyone who shares your thoughts or memories, erasing your entire social graph in one motion, so that no trace of the perception survives anywhere. This is why the Antimemetics Division exists, and why that division's personnel routinely find themselves fighting a war they cannot remember starting, working in offices full of empty desks belonging to colleagues whose names will not come. The Fifth Church worships it as the constellation Starfish and treats the number 5, stars, smoke, music, and the color pink as sacred to it. It is currently held at Site 41 inside a mnemonic isolation chamber, a room engineered to contain a thought. Nobody is confident that it works. The Anafabula, the Lord of Non-Existent, the Lady of Black Thorns. SCP-2747 is not an entity at all. It is a cluster of interdependent signs, iconography, and naremes, a set of story shapes that, once they accumulate densely enough inside any narrative, annihilate that narrative from the inside. The elements are specific and recognizable. Darkness, thorns, spirals, the number 7, nested layers of metafiction, a mounting sense of dread, and an ending that refuses to resolve. Load enough of them into a story and the story dies, at which point the Anafabula manifests one layer up, inside whatever narrative contained the one it just destroyed. The Foundation initially treated this as a containable curiosity, on the reasonable assumption that the affected narratives were fictional and therefore comfortably beneath baseline reality. Then the documentation reaches its actual conclusion, which is that the Foundation's own world is itself one narrative in an endless stack, with something above it reading, "Every layer in that stack is vulnerable to precisely the same tropes. The 50th Church is associated with it, which is not reassuring." And the entry you are listening to right now contains darkness, thorns, dread, the number 7, and no resolution. SCP-3812. Sam Howell was an ordinary man who died in 1996, and what stood up afterward can rewrite reality without intending to. SCP-3812 is a reality bender with functionally unbounded capability and almost no control over it. His alterations are reflexive rather than planned, emotional responses to the world rather than decisions about it, which means the safest possible interaction with him is one in which nothing upsets him. He suffers from an advanced Eigenmann-Viator schizophrenia complex, and the voices he hears are not hallucinations. They are the layer of reality directly above his own. SCP-3812 ascends narrative layers. Each time he climbs, he discovers that the world he came from was authored by something in the world he has just arrived in, and then he keeps going, and the stack shows no sign of ending. Every ascent rewrites everything beneath it. The Foundation's containment strategy amounts to therapy. Keep him calm, keep him unaware, keep him from climbing. Because the documented alternative is a ZK-class reality failure scenario triggered by a distressed man who does not understand what he is doing. He is not malicious, he is confused, frightened, and standing on the load-bearing wall of the universe. The Black Moon. It arrives as a question, written into Foundation documents that otherwise have nothing whatsoever to do with each other. Does the Black Moon howl? The phrase surfaces across the archive, in SCP-001 proposals, in incident logs, in interview transcripts, in places nobody deliberately put it, and at least one account connects it to the administrator, the figure whose decisions indirectly brought the Foundation into existence in the first place. There is no containment procedure, because there is no object to contain. There is no physical description, because none has ever survived review. There is a name, a question, and a pattern of appearances. The Foundation has never publicly determined whether the Black Moon is an entity, an event, a code phrase, or a hole in the record where an entity used to be. Power scaling accounts nonetheless place it alongside Yaldabaoth and the Scarlet King, which is remarkable for something with no confirmed properties at all. Everything else on this list can be measured somehow. A length in kilometers, a temperature, a number of remaining chains, a body count. The Black Moon cannot. It is the only god here whose entire file is a question mark, and it is the one nobody seems willing to look at directly. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.